Hello and a warm welcome to a very special podcast series, SheDiaries Trailblazers. This is a series in conversation with trailblazing women who have set templates and examples for generations of girls and women to follow. During their long and distinguished professional careers, they have surmounted many odds, smashed many glass ceilings, and broken many silos. My guest today for this episode is one such woman who needs no introduction. Please welcome Shabana Azmi.
Thank you.
Ma'am, let's start off with something very basic. You grew up in a home deeply rooted in literature, in culture, in theater, and more importantly, in progressive thought. How did that early environment shape your artistic voice and, more importantly, your commitment to social and gender equity?
My parents, the noted Urdu poet Kafi Azmi, and my mother, Shabana Kafi, who's very, very celebrated theatre actress, both of them believed that art should be used as an instrument for social change. And I think children learn by example,
Right.
not because people sit them down and give them lectures.
Absolutely.
And so all around myself, that's what I saw. And in fact, I must have been about 19 years old where I realized that gender equality, which I take for granted, is actually an exception rather than the rule. Because in the way I grew up, in the way my mother was always a working woman, when she had to go on long tours, then it was my father that would take on the household
Right.
duties. Normally, it's believed about poets that they do nothing, but my father proved them wrong. And so it was this very progressive atmosphere in which I was raised, where there was a great respect for India's composite culture and for social justice and for gender equality. So I think it was really by a process of osmosis
Right.
that these values I got.
And ma'am, you have a ringside view of one of the most vibrant industries in India, the film industry. You have been at the forefront, and from from Ankur and your career and the way you have chosen your roles, you have been an icon of gender equity and equality. But do you think the biases, there's still a long way to go before we can actually get rid of the biases? What is it that young girls still face that you had also faced when you entered the career?
Well, first, I'm a very optimistic person, and I always see the glass as half full rather than
half empty. Yeah.
empty. And I am working in a small NGO in a village called Nijwa in Azamgarh, which was the village in which my father was born, and then committed to founding the NGO, which worked towards the empowerment of the girl child and women in rural India, because that's what he believed will actually lead to progress if we turn towards our villages and also empower our women. So I have seen that process in society, and I've seen it reflected in films. Earlier in films, we saw the portrayal of the women, even if she was the centrifugal point, if she was the protagonist, it was always within the stereotype of the forgiving wife, the loving mother, the sacrificing sister, etc. And then it's taken a long way. I mean, in the 60s, it was considered main chup rahungi, was considered a virtue for a woman. Then, of course, it went through change. But we have reached definitely a point where we've moved away, where women in cinema, not only in parallel cinema, which in any case they had a bigger voice
Right.
there, but even in mainstream cinema, I think that women themselves are asking for more substantial roles. They are asking to be represented in a way where they're working women, which is a reality in India. But otherwise, if you were to see Hindi films in the 80s, you think all Indian women do is wear yellow chiffon sarees and dance at the Alps.
That's right.
But now that is happening. Even so, we have a very long way to go. But what I am very heartened by the fact is that we are having very many more women in the creative world, particularly in the film industry. There are more writers. There are earlier, it was very rare to find a woman on a set. I mean, she was only the costume designer or a hairdresser or something, and now it's peopled. Uh, Definitely 50%, or if not more.
Right.
So that I think is a healthy thing. Although I do believe that it is not necessary that you have to be a woman to be able to see a woman's point of view. Because I think the yin and the yang needs to be perfectly balanced. And if you see somebody like Sham Benegal, or if you see Roland Jaffe with whom I work, all these people have that balance and they can see it from that lens. So it's not necessary that only a woman, but I do hope is that when women tell stories, the lens through which they see it is informed by the women's agenda.
Right. And also, to what extent do you think, and this is a bit of a technology question because we are in the high noon of artificial intelligence and technology. One among the many ills of technology, one of the good things about technology is also that helps in eliminating human biases. Do you think technology can actually, help smash?
Oh yes, absolutely. Javed sir has been saying for a very, very long time that what technology has done in terms of we used to look at certain things and say, there's too much physical requirement, which women and men are different, etc. But technology has completely removed that. And then what is very interesting is if you see women, they had a smaller world that they were looking after.
Right.
So they were used to concentrating on the details. Men were always looking at the larger picture.
Okay.
In the larger picture, a lot of the details get whitewashed.
Lost, yeah.
Because you have a female gaze. I'm not necessarily saying a feminist gaze, although that's what I personally believe. But if you have a female gaze, you look at things differently. And I think that definitely is already making a difference, which is why we're seeing so many innovators, we're seeing so many scientists, we're seeing so many entrepreneurs. All of them are taking the huge benefit of this.
One of the key reasons that is often cited that women in the creative field, particularly in the decision-making space, like a director or a producer, haven't been able to reach the levels that their male counterparts have been, is also because of lack of capital. Do you think that has changed? That there are more now capital available, there are more funds available for women directors and filmmakers?
You see, it really depends on who brings the money.
Really? Yes, of course.
Particularly in film, because film ultimately is also a speculative business.
Right.
I think audiences have a very big role to play in it because the filmmaker is agnostic, which is not what I'm saying in defense. I'm just saying the reality. So if audiences would like to have far more women-centered films, and if they did well at the box office, if they brought in the numbers, then definitely uh, those pathways would be opened even more. Even so, I think it is a choice that you have to make, and sometimes in choices you have to make sacrifices of budget. You have to see that you do it within a more constrained thing. But once you start uh, making successful things, or you start getting recognized for your cinematic work, then the doors start opening. And we have very many more filmmakers today who are women. My own daughter, Zulia Akhtar, for instance, is somebody who's complete on equal parameters. It doesn't matter whom she chooses to make her protagonist. And in fact, in her film, the women are always very strong.
Absolutely. And do you think, to a large extent or to some extent, OTTs have actually democratized opportunities for women?
To a very great extent. Not only roles for women, but roles for senior people and also roles for character actors. Because earlier, the pool was just the same. You had stock characters.
Right.
So you had Jeevan who would do a certain thing, Om Prakash who would do a certain thing, Shivraj who would do. You didn't look beyond that. But now, because the casting directors are throwing their net wide and looking into small rural areas, into small towns, and getting faces that are real, the whole ecosystem is changing, and I am very welcoming of that.
For instance, a movie like a Lapata Ladies would not have been possible, say, about 10 to 15 years ago if there was no OTT.
Yes.
You have taken many unique female roles. How do you connect with these characters and bring in realism into it?
Without false modesty, I think that my career, 50 years is a long time, is really about being at the right place at the right time. But because I am a child of my parents, and because of kind of training that I received at the Film Institute, where I was exposed to a lot of international cinema, Liv Ullmann has been my all-time favorite actress. Ingmar Bergman has been one of my favorite directors. So that kind of exposure definitely led to dreams and desires which were beyond just catering to the lowest common denominator. And I was also extremely fortunate that there were writers, there were filmmakers who were casting me in those films. Now, when the films became successful, that really shattered the myth that if you portray a strong woman, then she's not going to be accepted by the audiences. Because audiences are changing. The woman is changing. Even in society, the woman is changing. I don't think men are changing at the same pace. And so women have learned to negotiate more space for themselves. But we are living in a very patriarchal society, and it's so deeply embedded in us that even women themselves don't know that these are patriarchal values that they have imbibed, and so that has to be broken.
And what's your view about the very pervasive presence of social media in our lives? And this is clearly, to a great extent, also upended the way people consume content. How has it translated into how people actually tell stories in the film world now?
I think it has led to an attention span which is very short. Although Javed Sahib doesn't agree with me, I feel that people do not have the patience to watch a very long film. But he says no, it is, if it is interesting, the people
will watch.
But I definitely feel length is and they want everything very fast. Now, there are lots of benefits in it, and there are lots of encumbrances also. So it's a constant fight that you have to do. So what I do, see, the social media can be your friend or it can be your enemy. Really. But it is here to stay. How you use it or how you choose not to respond into a toxic atmosphere is your own
decision.
Choice. You can't allow yourself to be completely affected by the toxicity of it, but it also comes to your help. You can reach out to so many more people. Creators are being able to, through YouTube, for instance, really promote their own talent. They need nothing except one camera. And what I'm seeing more and more, that rural women are finding their voices, and that makes me very happy. She's an agricultural farmer, and yet she knows folk songs, so she decides to put that up on YouTube. And I think there are very many positives of that also. I don't get engaged in toxic affairs as a choice that I make.
Absolutely, and it's the choice is well within us, so we have the power to choose. And you talked about attention span shrinking. I mean, just to borrow something from the word.
But it's not just that attention span shrinking at the cost of reading.
Right.
Now, because I come from a family of writers and I've always been surrounded by writers, and I've seen my father either at his desk writing or reading, or even in bed reading. So it's something that I saw. And I think reading is such an essential exercise to widen your imagination and to also introduce ideas sometimes which need a lot of patience, because critical thinking, what I think is lacking, particularly with
Absolutely.
everything fast, fast, fast. So critical thinking is something that we have to develop, and for that we have to read. All right, so some people say, no, we don't want to read it in a book form,
In
which
a
is
physical
fine.
form,
But
yeah.
as long as you're depending on more than just a soundbite to get your information, and also in many instances, I see that people have far more opinion than they have
Right.
information.
Right.
So that's something that we ourselves have to be conscious of.
Absolutely. Well, information.
Thinking fast, thinking slow. How do you deal with what you get?
Absolutely. This explosion has made us, explosion of social media has made us more informed, but I don't think it has made us any wiser, which is where I think the focus, and we need to bring back, we need to make book reading back again as a very glamorous, yeah, absolutely.
I think exposure to all arts is very, very important. Whether it is music, whether it's painting, whether it is reading, any of the arts, a lot of time we say, अरे यार ये क्लासिकल म्यूजिक अब इतनी देर तक आलाप ही करते रहते हैं, कौन करे, जल्दी करो, जल्दी करो. अरे, but there is a certain discipline,
Right.
and unless you give that, you are not going to be able to reach the kind of reach the kind of perfection that is. हर चीज का अपना वक्त होता है, पनपने में टाइम.
Correct. Absolutely. And finally, ma'am, as someone who has never shied away from taking a position as a public figure, of course, what role do you see of particularly people from the creative space who have a public persona in trying to create a more gender equal world?
Well, why would I say the word responsibility only for the creative world? Why is it not for industry? Why is it not for medicine? Why
Right.
is it not for any of the things? Why are we always only focusing on particularly cinema? Because we think that it has a very, very big influence on society. But if you really look, I think that the externals are there. Like fashion, for instance, is immediately
Right.
Imitated. The look is imitated. All of that, but the values get developed by the society that you're moving around in, and how you are seeing your values through that lens. So it is for every filmmaker, for herself and himself, to decide what is the world view they want to present. For instance, if I'm playing a very weak woman, I would play her, provided by the end of the film, you would see that from being a very weak woman, there has been a transformation and there has been a change. So, what the message of the film? The message of the film, is it reinforcing gender inequality, or is it saying there can be transformation? So, it's the intention of the filmmaker.
Absolutely. And that nuance is absolutely essential. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking the time out and dropping by to have this conversation with us and sharing your deep insights and perspective.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.